Hey, everybody, welcome back to another week of the Fixed Ops Mastermind powered by OEM Interactive. Is your service drive customer friendly? Are you delivering an experience that your customers want? This week, my guests, Greg Uland and Jeremy Stevens, are here to talk about the current state of service drives, what customers expect, and what is coming in the future. This episode of the Fixed Ops Mastermind podcast is brought to you by is powered by OEM Interactive. It is brought to you by PartsEdge. Your parts department is the backbone of your dealership and is responsible for nearly half of your total profits, according to NADA. Our system works within your DMS for a hybrid approach that combines the precision of automation with the nuanced decision making of parts experts. Thank you very much, PartsEdge. And welcome, Greg and Jeremy, to the Fixed Ops Mastermind show.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be
Hey,
here.
thank you for having me.
It's great to have you both here. Two guys that know a whole lot about service drives, and so the show is broken up into three segments. Segment one is what do they want? We'll talk about what we think people actually want in a service drive. Segment two is technology and people, and segment three we're going to talk about the future. And so let's get started with what do they want? An open question for either one of you. Do we even understand what a customer wants in a service drive in a dealership?
I think we do. I think we're getting closer to it every day, and what we're discovering is they want a selection. They want some options. Yeah, sometimes they want their vehicle picked up from their house. Sometimes they want to drive it in and take it home and a loaner car. Some people like to set up in our waiting room and do some work, and then where I come in at Bozard is we just take service to them. So I think our customers like choices. It's just not a
Mhm.
one fix all kind of situation.
Well, and I think that can also it's not a even a per customer basis. I think it's a per situation basis, right? Like, what's the repair? How long is the repair going to take? An individual. It's easy for us to say, well, Dave, he really likes to drop his car off and wait, but today Dave's got to go pick up his kid from soccer practice. So today Dave doesn't want to drop his car off and wait, right? He needs a ride. So I think it's per situation too. So having somebody that's really in tune to that with each customer is important.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction there, Greg. Is for the customer, I may be that customer that comes in and usually waits. I may be the customer that comes in and just has already made an appointment online, drops the keys, and says, "Hey, I made an appointment online. All the information's there. I'm detailed about it." But maybe I have a noise that I couldn't describe online, and so this time I need to talk to somebody. I need to spend a little more time. In which case, we need to be able to adapt, right, to what that customer wants. Um, I had a recent interaction with a valet at the hospital. So pulled up to the valet area. Very friendly gentleman came over, and the first thing he said, well, he said hello first of all, but then he said, "Have you ever used our service before?" And I said, "I have never used this valet before." And he said, "Well, first of all, welcome. Secondly," and he went through and he explained the entire process from what he was going to do with that ticket, what I was supposed to do with the ticket he gave me, when you pay for it, where you pay for it. He showed me where to pay when I leave. I mean, he went through step by step. He took probably over a minute to explain every single thing about that valet process. And that was him doing just that, just what you talked about, Greg. He was adapting, right? If I had said, "Yeah, I use it all the time," he would have went, "Great, here's your ticket, have a nice day." And so we need to be able to do that too, make that adaptation on the fly and do what our customers are actually expecting, and not thinking that we always know exactly what they want, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um
and that's a good example, Dave, too, of kind of I guess a human guided experience. So I'm sure we'll talk about technology as we go forward here, but we think about, I think at least a lot about how important the human is, especially in the service drive. I mean, people a vast majority of people that come in either into the service drive, or Jeremy, you can certainly talk to the folks that you go out to, right? They don't know what the process is. They don't know what work needs done on the car. They don't know what's wrong with the car. They don't know how long it's going to take. They don't know if they're going to have to, if the dealership's going to have it overnight because we need to order parts, or they just don't know. So setting those expectations up front and taking the time to do that makes a big difference in the entire interaction, right? If you set the expectations up front properly, or even maybe you overextend them a little bit and say, this could take this long. It just puts them in the right frame of mind, so then you can delay them if you beat those expectations.
Yeah, and the point of the customer not understanding the process is something that we always need to keep front of mind, right? To ask a customer if they're going to wait for their repair before you've told them how much time that repair might take, that's a question they can't answer. That's a friend texting you and saying, "What are you doing on Saturday?" Right? You're not going to answer that question until you know what they expect of you. Could be going to a concert, could be moving them out of a house. So we need to make sure they understand the process.
Yeah, Jeremy, how do you guys handle that kind of setting expectations up front when you're, working with customers? How do you handle that initial expectation setting?
So we try to set it right when they're there up front, especially in our service drive. Let them know the process in it. But a lot of times, and it's a case by case scenario. It's definitely everybody's in a certain situation. Nobody plans for their cars to break down, and a lot of times you're trying to explain it, and at that point they just don't care. They just want to get in a car and get going so they can go on with their life. So it's like what we were saying earlier. You kind of have to adapt to that customer, how they are, because we do a lot of personality tests and stuff like that through DIST analysts, and you have to do that with your customers too. You kind of have to read in between the lines with it to see how far you want to go with it. But communication is definitely key for sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you find, Jeremy, that the interactions with customers are different with your service? Your service drive is like the parking lot of their business or their home driveway, right? It's not at your store.
It's amazing how customers are a lot nicer in their environment, and and I shouldn't say it that way, but it's a different experience, totally different experience. When they're talking to the technician, it's like you're talking to a whole nother customer, because it's like firsthand information to the technician and stuff like that. So the interaction, I feel like sometimes when our customers come in, they got to talk to the middle person and have to translate everything. But with our technicians, they're right there on the spot. Customers are intrigued by it, so they want to see what's going on. So we have a lot of people watching. And it takes a lot, you have to have that technician that's comfortable being watched as they work on their car. But it's a totally different transaction, and the neighbors come by and chat, and it's like they want to like give water and stuff to the technician. Sometimes it's beer, and it's like, no, you can't do that. But it's wild what we see out there. I mess with the guys in the shop. They when I walk through the shop, they kind of mess with me. It's like, I think I want to be a mobile technician. I was like, man, you're too domesticated to be a mobile technician. You got to be out here in the elements. A little wild out here, but it's a cool interaction that we have with the customers. I always tell people, one of our technicians got a tip from one of our customers, and it was like a fruit tree, and it was like he turned around, he rode this fruit tree in the lap of the van, coming home with it hanging out the window.
It is Florida, Jeremy.
Yeah, we got some stories now, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, definitely different with people watching and things. Greg, you and I were talking before we came on air about Reynolds and Reynolds just buying TSD,
Yep.
and I ran a Nissan store for a number of years, and just about every Nissan dealership has these massive windows that look into the shop. And when you've never been in a Nissan store, it's a little bit shocking at times, where you're like, oh, man, the customers can see the entire shop here. Like you are literally always on stage, right? We tell our advisors that when you're at the desk, you're on the service drive, you're on stage. But that puts our technicians on stage the entire day, the same as yours are when they're out in their driveway, Jeremy.
Yeah. It definitely is, but it brings that level of transparency also.
Yeah.
Because I think when customers come in, they're usually their car goes into this building that there's no eyes on it, so it's like you're not 100% sure, and it's a big investment for them just to, here's the key to my $100,000 Lincoln, um, and it's like you lose track of it, and when I was a technician, I couldn't stand customers watching me, but eventually I got used to it, and especially when you're doing like ball joints and stuff like that, because some of the stuff you got to do is loud, and
Yeah.
I used to have to talk to the customers like, hey, I'm about to make a lot of noise, and it feels like I'm damaging your vehicle, but this is the process.
Yeah, watching a technician do a ball joint is like watching a video of a doctor doing one of those hip replacements. They've got the big slide hammer on the guy's hip and things, and it's the same thing. Like they're not actually hurting anything, but it doesn't always look the prettiest. So what do we think is our current state for service drive interactions right now? And what I mean by that is, are we doing a good job of adapting to those customers? Right there's every service drive is different. Up here in the Northeast, you have a whole lot of dealerships that are old dealerships. They don't even have a service drive. Right. So that's a different adaptation as to whether a customer is going to park and walk in. Some of the dealerships that have been built that they put in service drives, customers are so used to it, they park outside and walk in anyways, even when they can drive in. And sometimes they're afraid of those big garage doors, and knowing what they should do. So how are we as the dealers adapting to our customers for service drive interactions?
Well, I'll start, Jeremy, if it's all right. I got a story to share, and it's not necessarily a dealership story, but just this past weekend, I visited a hotel, and it was a pretty nice hotel. My wife and I were there, but and honestly, I got to imagine that it was a tools problem that were being provided to the people that were there. So they had this front desk staff that were happy. They had smiles on their, well, they put on a good front, I guess. I don't know if they were happy. I couldn't have been happy probably with what they were dealing with, but they were really trying, and they were doing their absolute best to make a great experience. But at the end of the day, the experience was it was really poor. The tools they were using, they couldn't get us a room. Once they got us a room, they put us in the wrong room. They didn't realize somebody was in a room. They thought we had checked out at one point. It was kind of a mess through the entire experience. And I was watching it, and I was watching how frustrated, because I felt frustrated, right, as the guest. But they were frustrated too, because all they wanted to do was provide a good experience, and they couldn't, because these tools were standing in their way. And they didn't have any other way to manage, me or anybody else in the hotel for that matter. So there was a high level of frustration. And when your people, when your employees are frustrated, it becomes extremely difficult for them to delight a customer, to make a customer happy, to exceed expectations. So I do think, it's a high stress job as it is. You look at a service advisor, and they're trying to get a lot of customers through the drive. They're trying to keep everybody happy. They're trying to communicate well. They're trying to sell. So it's a high stress job. And when we don't make it easy on them, that's when I think we get into some trouble. So I don't know, Jeremy, if you have a different perspective, but it struck me really kind of square in the jaw this weekend as I was going through that, because I was like, man, this is what customers in our industry experience too, because you have great people that are trying to do the right thing, and they just can't sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely is challenging, especially because in the dealership life, it's like they don't come like once every 10 minutes. They come in waves and waves of people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the hard part, is having enough staff to create those, that 7 to 8 o'clock rush when you have like 50 people come in at one time, and you're just trying to survive at that point. And and it is tough. And then next thing you know, there's nothing happening. And then next wave, it's like they all wait at the McDonald's or something. It's like, hey, let's go attack the dealership at one time. But it's all the processes, and like what you were saying, the right tools. we're restructuring some stuff up here at Bozar where we're doing a very good walk around with the tablets and stuff like that, gathering information and making sure we're on point on that part. But it is a challenge because every store is different. Everybody's, we're fortunate in our main shop that we have a service drive. Our quick lane doesn't have a service drive, so it's like everything's a little different, and you had to create processes that kind of matches the facilities and the people.
Yeah, it's funny, Jeremy, that there's, as I've traveled around the country training in dealerships, there's some things that are completely different in different parts of the country. The one thing that always remains the same at every dealership is that sudden rush that you talk about, and it is like they all wait somewhere and then come to the dealership. And sometimes it's even, you think they're in a Facebook chat somewhere going, let's go Tuesday. Right? You stand around Monday with nobody around. Tuesday everybody's there. Wednesday you're back to doing nothing.
Well, that's when the phone's ringing off the hook too, right? So you're
Yeah.
that as well.
Absolutely. All right, so that'll round out segment one. Segment one was brought to us by InteliChek. Know your competition. And segment two, we're going to talk about technology and people. And so, first thing, the first thing that I want to know: do you guys think that we have introduced too much technology into the service drive? Jeremy, it was a perfect segue for that because you just mentioned that you've got them out there with iPads in the service drive.
It is because sometimes I always tell people any software that we have, I feel like we only use like 20% of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference in going digital and having technology that can actually help, right? Because when there's a big difference between taking the process that we've always done and we're typing on a keyboard instead of using a pen and paper versus having software or technology of some kind of handle a process for us. The latter creates efficiencies. The prior, I mean, it really, at best, it stays the same and makes it digital. At worst, it can really slow you down even. So I think there's a big difference in the types of tools too that we're trying to put back there. So it matters.
That's a really interesting point that you just made. That is it technology that's just enhancing a process, or like the RO being written electronically as opposed to handwriting it, right?
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing, and it just changed the way that it got done, as opposed to a technology that is actually there to enhance something or change something. Um, Jeremy, what are you seeing as far as um, maybe too much tech, or as Greg just alluded to, not the right tech in the drive?
It is. So we're going through that right now with mobile service because we're on our 26th truck now, and there's lots of software out there, and everybody wants us to use their software.
Hang on, Jeremy. I'm going to put a pin in that because you just said your 26th truck. Like that's a major operation. I wanted to make sure everybody heard that and we put a pin in that. Sorry to interrupt, but that's not a small feat.
Yeah, it's definitely been challenging, but I so there's so much software out there, and everybody's telling me that hey, this is the way our software works, and I don't like that. Um, and plus, I don't know what I don't know. So what we did, um, we maximized our human potential first, just so I know everything about the business, all the little ruts and speed bumps on that. So now that we mapped out our process is on point. It works. We do a lot of things in the human element side. And now I feel confident to bring software in to maximize that part of it. And we've been working with a software company for about a month now. And what I love about this software company is they didn't tell me that I had to fit in their mold. They actually came down and sat with my team for 3 days and
Wow.
mapped out their process. And they redesigned their software for what we need it for.
Mm.
Um, so it kind of brings that element to it. And y'all read books like the Elon Musk book. It's like a thick book, but in chapter 46, you got to memorize chapter 46 because he went through the same thing where he thought he had to have all this tech to put his cars together. And in the end, he realized it was too much tech and he needed some human elements in there to process it through. Um, so that's the way I look. A lot of the software, we only use a little bit of it. Um, and we just think it's a fix all. It's almost like the old snake oil stuff. It's like, oh yeah, if I had this software, my life is going to change forever. And what it does, it makes it worse because now you're paying money for it and nobody uses it because they didn't want it in the first place.
Yeah.
So we always kind of maximize our human element first.
Yeah, I love that approach. And I mean, it's no different than what we've been guilty of as dealers in the past of forcing a customer through our process, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing when you're getting a software and you want the dealership to conform to what your software does as opposed to molding it to what they need. So it's a great point there. So I'm going to do the stat of the week, and I'm going to warn you ahead of time. If you've been watching the Fixed Ops Mastermind, the stats are usually pretty short. This is a long one. So warning you ahead of time. The stat of the week is brought to you this week by Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. 98% of B2C leaders say customers trust their brand more when it's easy to do business with the brand. Consumers agree on this point, with 96% saying they trust a brand more when it's easy to do business with it. Yet only 35% of consumers say it is very easy to do business with the brands they trust most. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, right? That's we agree that consumers will do more business with us when they trust us. Consumers tell us that they will do business with brands that they trust, and yet somehow we're only at consumers trusting our brand 36% when we think it's much higher than that. And I think a lot of that comes down to what we've been talking about here, which is adapting to a customer, adapting technology to the needs of customers or to the need of the business so that they can adapt to the need of the customer. To your point, Greg, at the hotel, they were trying to do the right thing for you and just couldn't, right? They couldn't get out of the way, of the tools that they were provided. And so a hot subject from probably 7-8 years ago was kiosks, right? We were going to put kiosks in the service drive, and it was going to eliminate the service advisors, and service advisors were up in arms because they were going to lose their jobs. Personally, I was always on the side of the kiosk because I didn't see it as a replacement to a service advisor. I saw it as what it has really kind of become, which is just an enhancement to an advisor. Right? We talked earlier about, you may have a customer that comes in that wants to talk to an advisor every single time. You may have a customer that comes in that would rather not talk to an advisor, would rather go over to the kiosk, dump their order in, and be on their way. And so when I go into service drives, I see kiosks that are maybe sitting right in the middle of the drive, maybe they're off to the side, but they're completely covered in dust. You can tell nobody is touching those things. And then there's other ones that are completely worn out because as you walk into that service drive, nobody greets you, nobody talks to you, and so they have no choice but to go to the kiosk because they think that's the thing to do. And so, what role do those kiosks really play? Where should they fit into a dealership's overall service drive operation?
From my perspective, I think there's two things to keep in mind with a kiosk. So the first one is it can honestly be a sales tool for an advisor, right? And it's almost a forced march process. There is an inherent entertainment value to a big old screen, right? A screen that you can touch and do stuff with. People are drawn to it. It's like those blue light things for the mosquitoes, right? Like you can't ignore one of those big screens, especially when you can touch it and play with it. So how do you leverage it as a tool to help sell, right? It can be a guided process. It can kind of walk you through that forced march, whether it's an advisor walking up or just a customer doing it themselves. But it can make sure that contact information is collected and previously declined services are always recommended, and there's a lot of benefits to it. But it has to be, I think, at least viewed as an assistant, or a sales tool versus in any way, shape, or form a replacement. I go to a car wash, and they have a little kiosk. I think pretty much every one of them does now. But whenever they at least have the staff, there's always somebody out there, and it kind of, sometimes it annoys me because like I know how to work this thing, but they come out and they'll say, "Do you know which kind of wash you want?" And they always, the good ones at least, the good people that are working there, try to upsell to the next package, right? Or do you want to join our monthly program where it's basically a wash and a half. If you're going to come back in a couple of weeks, you may as well. So they're salespeople. I'll call them salespeople. I don't know what their title is, but they come out and they kind of leverage the kiosk as a sales tool. So that to me is a big way that we're seeing dealers be successful with kiosks is kind of almost a hybrid approach where you still have that human element, but you have this big entertaining tool to help you sell.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's another tool for the customer. We were in our meeting. We were talking about Chick-fil-A, how Chick-fil-A, their drive-through was packed. So let's do a mobile order app. And then what it did, it actually relieved some of the drive-through lines and stuff. And I'm the type of person, I like to use the app and not talk to anybody because by the end of the day, my introverted powers are gone, and I just don't want that interaction with anybody. Uh, so I much rather use a kiosk if all of like the self checkout counters. That's all me right there. It's like I'm gonna go and be on my way. Now my wife, on the other hand, she's totally opposite. She gains her energy by talking to everybody that she comes in contact with. So
Right.
she's the type where she wants to talk to people at the store, and I'm the type I'm looking on my phone to try to find stuff. So it just varies on there, and I think, and I've done this many times where I found the bright shiny penny and I showed everybody. It's like, hey, look, amazing this kiosk is. Can y'all just make it work? And there's no vision, there's no why to it, there's no process to it. So of course it's going to collect dust out there because nobody followed the process, and they had that one bad customer that nobody went and got the keys out of, and now it's like cursed forever because it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the other advantage of the kiosk, right? Is your night drop. It's those. It's like having a service advisor on hand 24 hours a day. Right now, instead of a customer putting their name on a paper envelope and dropping it in, they're going through that force march you mentioned, Greg,
Yeah.
of the same thing an advisor you would hope is taking a customer through, so that you get all the information and you give them those upsell abilities, even when nobody is there. Um,
Yeah.
Jeremy, do you see a day when your mobile truck pulls up and the door opens and it's just a kiosk there for a customer to interact with?
Getting close. No.
So that is the one thing that, guys, I'd say, we talk about, what tech's doing, and what can it do, what's it replaced, and it's like, I'll tell you the one thing it hasn't replaced as I'll say, a novice technician is diagnostics, because I don't care, what tools, what onboard diagnostic tools there are on a vehicle, and what kind of reader you have. In my opinion, it has not gotten easier to tell what's wrong with a car, right? It's gotten a tremendous amount harder, even with all the onboard diagnostic tools. So, I think our technicians and their experience and their skills are one thing. And I think this is where you were going, Dave, with kind of a chuckle is, these men and women are so important to the business and to the industry.
Right. Yeah, it's great to think that you can just get a code and know what's wrong with a car, but to know that there's 4 miles of wires in between that code and the problem, the actual problem, I think there needs to be more visuals out there for customers of what's underneath their carpets and behind their dash. I think they'd be surprised to know how many things. And now they're running all these different commands through one wire, right? There's one wire that's handling 4 or 5 different commands, which as a tech who wasn't a good tech when I was, blows my mind that they're doing that kind of stuff. So, do we see tech replacing anything completely? Do you think it can happen?
I don't think it can. Which I don't want to say that because there's a lot of stuff that's evolving and stuff like that, but there's still going to be that human element where somebody has to go through it and double check this stuff because of course, there's AI technology when a car sets a code and it sends the feedback to the manufacturer, and they're using AI technology to say, hey, we've seen this, and they're sending that part.
Hmm.
But there's so many different other issues that, like the pin, like you're saying about the wires, we've had so many where the pin's backed out and little odd and
Right.
end stuff. And if we got technicians just throwing parts in there, it's throwing all that algorithm completely haywire.
Yep.
But I still think there's going to be the human element because I think that's still important because I'm an AI fan. I
Yeah.
use it when I write emails because you can tell the way I talk, me writing kind of sounds like that. So I have to use a lot of AI to help me sound professional. But when it comes to that customer experience side, I still think that's always going to be the human element. It's gonna win every time, that connection on that side of it, and the text. We still got to have the text in there that actually goes in and does that part.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the technician, at least for the foreseeable future, right? Who knows what'll happen with vehicles and the distant future, but for the foreseeable future, you're still going to have to repair and maintain vehicles, and it's going to take a person to do that. And I think where technology can help, and I don't know if replace is the right word, but where it can help is making sure that every single second of every single minute of every single day is able to be sold, right? Like, how can we minimize or, in a perfect world, eliminate dead bay time where there's a car sitting on a rack that's not getting work done on it, right? How do we keep the technician doing work on a vehicle every second that it's in that bay? Get it up, get it worked on, get it down. So the more that we can speed up that process from wheels up to wheels down, that's where I think the efficiency gains are going to be. I don't know that we're going to replace anything, but how do we get more, right? How do we make it easier on our technicians and our advisors to get work through the shop? I mean, that's the name of the game, right? I mean, you only got so many bays and so many hours. So how you gonna sell them? And the quicker you can do that and get stuff through is the better off you're going to be. So I think that's where, at least again in the foreseeable future, that's where technology is going to continue to help and improve. Is get that technician the parts they need right away, get that approval right away. Just to eliminate the walking and waiting and talking.
Yeah. Enhancements, right? At the end of the day, it's what we've said for a long time. This is a customer relationship business. They happen to bring a vehicle to us, but it could be anything they're bringing to us. It's about relationships, and at least at this point, you can't replace relationships with AI or machines or kiosks or anything else. So for the foreseeable future, the the technology is not going to replace the people in the dealership. Um, and now a loaded question: is the walk around dead? And I'll start with this. It's my belief that the walk around that has existed for the last 20 plus years is dead. That the walk around as a selling tool, which is how it was introduced when I was an advisor. This is a way to sell customers things. That walk around is dead. I believe it's a relationship building tool now. But what do you guys think?
I personally think it is that relationship, is that connection part with the customer side, uh, but also it kind of gets you on the same page with the customer too, because we know we want to do the walk around to look at the tires and stuff like that, but also to really protect the dealership with some damage. I hate to bring the negative side of it to it, but it's the facts. Yeah, here we can service over 300 cars in one day, so chances are customers never really look at their cars closely until they get it back from the
Right.
dealership. It happens every time, and a lot of it, it was there, but you didn't document it, you didn't see that, and you're stuck fixing it unless you just want to totally ruin a relationship.
Right.
So it puts a very transparent and you on the same page with the customer, and it's not like you got to make a big deal about it. It's like when you're walking around the car, they usually call it out themselves. It's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
scratched it there, and it's that part of it too. But it definitely brings that connection part.
Yeah, and I think it's every interaction that you have with a customer really needs to add value, right? It can't just be something where it's sterile and you're kind of doing things something to check the box. You have to add value, whether that's through relationship, Jeremy, to your point, or whether it's through maybe it is selling, but if it is, you kind of got to have that checklist. And again, it's about communication, right? You're explaining to them and setting expectations, right? And maybe you're just looking at wipers, right? Or some, you got 5 things that you're going to look at, but communicate that to them, let them know, say, hey, we do this with every customer. This week we finally got some rain. The last 6 people I've talked to didn't realize they needed wipers until it rained yesterday.
Yep.
So let's just take a look at yours real quick. But you have to add value to every interaction. It can't just be, hey, we're going to walk around this thing and I'm going to document everything that's wrong with your car.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also when that walk around, we kind of teach our people to look for little signs like a car seat in the back, a football or bumper stickers, anything that you can break the ice and make a connection with that customer. So that's probably what I should have started with is find something you can connect that customer, sports team or something, kids or whatever, so you can start building that relationship.
Yeah, and on the damage point, Jeremy, it's valid, right? It's a
Yeah.
valid concern, and for larger dealerships like yours, it can be a huge expense to be paying for damage you didn't cause. Um, if you approach it right with the customer, right? We don't want it to be a I'm pointing out damage so that a customer is now looking at you and going, "Oh, you thought I was going to blame you for that, right? You think I'm a
Yeah.
dishonest person, right?" If you approach it as, "Hey, I'm gonna do a walk around and we're gonna look for I'm going to make sure your tires look good, your wipers look good. Going to look for any kind of scratches or damage on the car because accidents do happen in our shop, and I want to make sure that you don't have to pay for something that you didn't cause. Right now, you've turned it around the other way. Now you're looking to make sure the car is good, as opposed to now if you do find a scratch or whatever, you can point it out, and now it doesn't look like you're trying to say to the customer, I don't trust you to not blame me for this scratch that's been on your car for 6 months, but you never walked around the passenger side.
Yeah.
So we are at the end of segment 2. Before we end segment 2, though, we're going to do the quote of the week. And the quote of the week is brought to us by Petra Automotive Products. Most people spend more time and energy going around problems than in trying to solve them. Somebody we may know, Henry Ford. And so a lot of times we do this in the dealership world, right? It's easier to walk around those 2 used tires that somebody dropped in the wrong place in front of parts instead of picking them up and taking them out to the used tire pile. And so we need to always be cognizant of not cognizant of looking with different eyes at what's in front of us, right? Jeremy, you walk into that dealership every single day. And I heard somebody a few weeks ago talking about walking into your business as if it was grand opening day, right? So grand opening day, you're going around and you're making sure everything's perfect. The windows are clean. The balloons have the right amount of helium in them, right? You're going through, you're making sure everything is correct. And 8 months down the line, you're just walking in, right? And there could be, trash on the ground or whatever. You walk right by it, you just don't notice it. There could be marks, handprints on the windows, and you don't notice it because it's just there every day. And so we have to be looking with those new eyes, those grand opening eyes to make sure that we find those things. As we talk about the future, which is segment 3, how do we see changes in maybe the way kiosks are used, what they look like, what they function as? Remote service, Jeremy, what's the future look like there? And I think this is further out than most people think, but self-driving cars, what do they change with our business? So gonna look for you guys to be futurists here for a little bit.
Well, I can touch on a couple of them. On So we'll start with the future mobile service, just because I'm submerged in that side. When we first started down this road, I came down here in December, and it was really to create customer satisfaction and relieve the capacity of the shop. I wanted to take some jobs that wouldn't require a lift out there, and what's happened is the customers love it so much that that's what they want. So it actually created another business almost. So not only I tried to relieve the capacity of the shop, we just filled more appointments back in the shop, and we filled more mobile appointments up in the shop. So we discovered there's a huge want from our customers that they've been screaming it for years. They really don't like coming to the dealership to service. So now we just confirmed it. So we're definitely growing that side to meet that customer expectations, because they, like we were talking about earlier, they really like it. They like the technicians. The customers are much more happier in their own elements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think as we evolve, just like you were saying in the beginning, looking at your dealership with grand opening eyes, it's the leadership's hardest thing is the consistency of doing it day in and day out, with everything bogging down on a manager's plate of the day-to-day fires that they're actually trying to put out. So, looking in the future and seeing what that looks like, and start developing a plan to get to that point, so you can maintain it and be consistent and put processes in place that help the employee have a voice, and have them actually fix a lot of the things. A lot of people on our team wants to win. I don't know too many employees that come to work hoping to lose.
Right.
But if we create an environment where they have a part in it, get everybody bought in, just like the kiosk. If you want a kiosk, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. But if you're going to have one, get your team involved to see how it's going to work and see if they're bought into it, because you'll just be wasting time and money if they're really not bought into it, or they don't even understand why we need one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, good point. And Jeremy, I'd add to, so what you guys are doing in, beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, I think is pretty amazing. But from a mobile service perspective, I would also present that it's what you're able to do. Most dealers, or at least, a large portion of dealers, aren't going to be able to accomplish that, just because of demographics, because of location. I mean, it's difficult to do mobile service, in a parking lot or in a driveway when it's -7 with 20-mile-an-hour wind. So, depending on where you are, I do think that there's a large portion of dealerships that are going to need to find other ways to create the experiences that you're creating. So, I think I love that you guys are sharing so much about what you're learning too, because ultimately, I think for a big portion of the dealer body, we're going to end up with a blended model, right? It's not going to be this traditional all in-store model. It's not going to be necessarily an all mobile model. It's probably going to be some combination of the two, right? And how do we create that great experience for the customer, the great experience for our technicians and our advisors, everybody involved in the interaction? How do we create that and create that magic that you guys are doing such a great job of in your remote setting, right? In your mobile setting. How do you blend that with the in-store to make sure that we're delivering that kind of wow experience for every customer? And they probably won't come in and offer your tech a beer in the store, but that same kind of mentality where they feel a connection and they appreciate that the person's working on their vehicle, and they appreciate that maybe you took them home, or whatever the case is. So I think that blended model is really what we're gonna see. And again, I love what you're doing. And for you guys, I think you continue running down this mobile path, and it's gonna work for you. It's obviously working for you. You got 26 trucks, but being able to pull a lot of what you've learned through this experience for other stores to either do the same thing or put it into a blended model, I think will be really important in the future.
Yeah, it's an excellent point that the blended model is probably, I think, for most things in our lives, that's the way most things end up, right? It's typically not a black or white issue. Years ago, when Brian Benstock up at Paragon Honda was starting with pickup and delivery, and everybody was like, "This is the greatest thing in the world," it was for that market, right? And to your point, Greg, the outside remote work in New England doesn't work quite as well as it does down in Florida. And pickup and delivery doesn't work as well outside of that market that Brian has there. Not to take anything away from what you guys are doing with 26 mobile trucks or what Brian did with pickup and delivery. Still takes a huge amount of work to make it work and planning to put it together. Just to your point, Greg, doesn't work everywhere. And so, just like this show, you're not going to take and implement every single thing that the three of us said, right? You're going to pick and choose your pieces that you want to work with, and use those in your store, or maybe it's even just a piece of something that we said that hopefully gets you to look at something different and changes an experience for your customers. Um, so how do we stay in touch with what our customers want? Obviously, there's manufacturer surveys out there, right? That I don't think that's the way we really want to get our feedback from our customers. I think we'd like to be a little more ahead of the curve than that. That's a lag metric that you don't want to be the bottom of. And so what tools should we be using to stay in touch with our customers?
Well, I'm thinking they'll tell you, and most of the time they're telling everybody in the store and their friends and everything. So it's pretty much the tools are just your ears.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to it, and a lot of my issues. I started in a dealership in the '90s, so I am so used to everything. So it's just my normal way of life.
Yep.
But like my cousin, he has no idea what goes on, so he looks at it totally different than I do. So to get out of my lifetime career out of the dealership and just unplug myself totally from the dealership and the relationships and bonds that I have with it and think like a customer, we always call it look through it with through the customer's lens, see what the customer looks at,
Yeah.
and because a lot of times it's our baby and we're very protective. So if you say something bad about the dealership, we go off, and that's that's your passion there, but you
Yep.
have to be open minded to receive some of that because it's all around. I mean, you can hear it everywhere. It's just we tune it out most of the time.
Well, I think you got to ask, right? I mean, I think very few people, in my opinion, can hide it completely when they're upset, right? Or when they're frustrated or when they're disappointed. You get a sense for it, right? You guys have been doing this for a long time, right? When you're in a customer service business, you kind of know when you didn't make somebody really, truly happy. You might not know if they were just, okay, because they're going to smile and they'll be on their way. But you can tell in that interaction, there's something about it, whether it's body language, whether it's tone, whether it's in their eyes. Like you can tell when somebody didn't have a great experience, or when they're upset. So leaning into it a little bit, and I mean, it's going to take time, right? As soon as you ask the question, now you got to fix the problem. But you have to, I think, empower your service advisors to do that, empower your service managers to do that, and be willing to take the time to fix those things, address those things, and then you can learn from those experiences. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Where as soon as you ask the question, you better be prepared to fix whatever the issue is. But if you're willing to ask the question, you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. And you're right. If you're going to ask the question, you are going to learn a lot, and you do need to actually act on that, right? Same thing if you're doing those employee surveys and you get it and you go, wow, this is really cool, and then you toss it away. You've caused more damage than than you will ever fix by understanding what upsets your employees. Um, so the as we talk to the customers, um, it's not feasible to think that Jeremy or a leader at Bozard is going to talk to every of the 300 customers that roll through that service drive every day, right? Um, but you can touch a percentage of them, and to your point, Greg, have your people empowered enough that when they get feedback, they know what to do with it, right? Rather than just taking it and burying it. Um, how do we go about setting that up so that we can continue to listen to our customers and improve the experience that they tell us that they want?
When our in our department here, couple ways. We have I have like weekly meetings with each with the service advisors, the tech, my team leads, and stuff like that, just so I can get feedback from them because I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. But we create an environment where they'll open up. So a lot of your service advisors know exactly what the problems are. We just got to create an environment where we listen to them and actually, like what you said earlier, do something about it, solve the issue, not just walk around it like the quote said. Because we're not perfect here at Bozard. I've made some errors, mistakes trying to launch all these mobile vans, and this and just this past week I've had 3 emails from customers that says the same thing, and it's like it comes in threes, I reckon. And I was like, we got to do a better job with this. So we met with the team. It's like, oh yeah, we've experienced that too, and it's like, okay, now we got to fix it. Um, so it's pretty much just your customers will tell you, and it's just taking the time to actually fix it and creating those channels where the employees can tell you, it's like, hey, we got this issue coming up. And you don't have to solve the issue. You have people around you that are more capable of solving issues than a lot of the leaders, or at least me on that side of it. But pretty much keeping the open channels up so your employees can, have a voice.
Yeah, it's great, and it's good that you guys are acting on the things that you see, right, and are open to hearing what your team is telling you, that they're hearing. Wish it was the norm, but we all know that's it's not the norm. Not just in automotive, in any company in the world. That's not that's still not the norm. Um, and so, Jeremy, obviously, your guys are working on cars in front of the customers, as you stated earlier, sometimes in front of the whole neighborhood, and with all the information that's available out there online and things. Our business we've talked about transparency for a while, but it's pretty transparent right now. And how does that play a role in the future of our customer interactions, whether in the service drive, in their driveway, when they're making appointments? How does that increased transparency that customers have into the business play a role in what we're going to see in the future?
I think I think they're going to want more of it. It actually helps. It helps the customer understand what you have to go through to check certain things. I remember we had a technician with the door panel off, and just checking an electrical issue, and the customer came out, and of course they're kind of shocked because they never seen behind the door panel before, but it really opened their eyes to us. Like, well, shoot, I thought you could just plug your computer up to it and flip a couple of buttons and fix my car. So that transparent is it's actually very good because they're seeing the struggles of the technician. They're
Hmm.
realizing that it's not they're plugging something up that's going to tell them what's wrong with it. They actually have to take stuff apart and do some testing and stuff like that. So from that side, I see it benefiting us, just because they're knowing that when they come into service drive, they think every job takes 30 minutes. Don't matter what it is, it's 30 minutes.
Right.
You can do everything under the hood in 30 minutes, and it's not the case. So it's definitely evolved into that part, giving a little bit more understanding, with the technicians and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think, putting the lens on it of education versus maybe transparency is really helpful for me to think about it. When I think about it, it's like, tell them it's okay to tell them. You can tell them exactly how to fix it, right? The work takes so long and it's so detailed and it's so difficult to do oftentimes. They're never going to do that work. But when they understand it and they feel better about the fact that you know what you're talking about, right? And they understand that it's a task to get it done. It's a lot of work to get it done. They're more willing to be patient. They're more willing to pay for the other work that you recommend, just by educating them on what needs to be done. I think about a furnace, right? Your heat goes out or your AC goes out, and they aren't very complicated machines, to be honest with you. But do you really want to be down there and taking the motor out and scraping your knuckles and trying to get it back in? And it's a real pain to work on. So yeah, I mean, this is what's wrong. This is what you can do. It's actually helpful, right? And they're more willing to listen and more willing to be happy to pay for it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would totally agree with that. On the transparency side of things, um, you know, I've touted how great this industry is for decades, right? And I don't tout that because I think it's underhanded, hide this from the customer kind of thing, right? You're welcome to come and see whatever it is. It might be it might be like Jeremy said earlier, it might be loud and it might be ugly, but it's not but it's not doing anything wrong. It's not doing anything nefarious, right? We're trying to fix vehicles, get you back on the road, so you can get your family where you need to, or get you to whatever your job is that you use to provide for your families. And so the transparency only opens that up more, right? Them getting to see what it takes to take a door panel off. Customers understanding more about what is involved in not just the repair itself. Maybe it's in what's involved in getting a part, right? Like maybe it's something where they need to understand the process of getting that part, and it's not sitting at a parts store down the street. It's in China. It's in Croatia. It's somewhere else that we need to get that part here, because they're made in by so many different vendors throughout the industry. That transparency, to your point, Greg, can only help the industry and help our customers understand more of what our advisors, our leaders, and our technicians are going through every day trying to fix their cars. Gentlemen, this has been a very quick hour, well, just short of an hour, at great knowledge. Any final points before we sign off?
I just want to tell Jeremy, keep up the great work. I love what they're doing down there. Keep growing, keep sharing what you're learning, because I think what you guys are doing is, pretty forward thinking, and you're definitely leaders in the space. So I love hearing the trials and tribulations that you're going through. So thank you for being so open and sharing everything.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, but I reckon just the final words is, look at every part of your business through the customer lens. A lot of people have been in the dealerships for a long time, so everything's normal to them. So when you come to the new place, you see things that nobody else. But do that, and create an environment where your employees can open up and tell you the issues, but then act upon them. That's the most important part. Nobody likes going to meetings unless something happens. So definitely create some action to get things rolling.
Excellent. Greg, Jeremy, thank you again for spending some time with us and imparting your wisdom upon the audience. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to watch today, and we will see you all next week. A final thank you to our sponsors.